Parshas Beshalach. We have our portion that addresses the departure from Egypt. Obviously, the fact that we celebrate Pesach for 7 days. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You had some good wine. The fact that we celebrate Pesach for 7 days indicates that the departure was not complete by just leaving Egypt physically. That occurred on day one, on the 15th of Nisan. And obviously, if we extend the holiday and make it into a 7-day holiday, something occurs on day 7, which is quite significant for whatever message this holiday is about. I don't believe that it's only God saying, hey, they worked so hard preparing for Pesach. It wouldn't be fair if it is only 1 day. Let's just make it 7. And I don't think that that's how it worked. Obviously, there must be something occurring on day 7. The day when they cross the sea, the day when a significant portion, if not the whole Egyptian army goes, they're tanked, they're underwater, and the day that they call out, they praise God with a shira, with a song. So that's what we're going to be reading about. The first few words in the portion give us already an indication of the problem the nation had. And the problem the nation had was Vayehi, on page 366, Vahi Beshalach Paro et ha'am. It happened when Pharaoh sent out the people. And here's the problem. The problem is this is a nation that for many, many decades grew up in an environment that Pharaoh is everything. Right? Pharaoh is godlike, and these are Jews. Jews adapt into the culture. They buy into what the culture is about. They do it very, very fast. And therefore, yes, you were able to take the Jew out of Egypt, but you weren't able to take the Egypt out of the Jew. And if you would interview, if CNN or Fox News would walk over and interview one of these slaves who has just left the land of Egypt, he would say, oh, Baruch Paro, meaning they would still be thankful to Pharaoh for the fact that he released us. They give him the credit because, after all, he runs the world. This might have not been the attitude of the whole nation, but the Am meaning people, the simple people of Israel, they were the ones that still gave credit to Pharaoh. So there was something very necessary to occur to change this attitude, that it is the Almighty, that He's in control of things. And that's what's going to happen with the song, with the crossing of the sea. When they go ahead and they claim that, they declare and proclaim that the sus verochvo ramabayam, that the chariot as well was thrown and cast into the sea. The chariot is mentioned a lot, and it's what's interesting to note is that the vision of Yecheskel, the vision of the prophet Yecheskel of God, he has a vision of the Almighty, and the metaphor presented was one of a chariot. God runs the chariot, God runs the world. From a distance you see the chariot, it looks like as if the horses are pulling the wagon and there's no one in control there but the horses. You get closer, you see that there is someone holding the reins. That is the Almighty God. And this image of chariot is what they gain clarity at the sea. And therefore, basically, what's occurring to the people of Israel is it is not Pharaoh and his chariot. He is not the one in control. There is a God who is in control. That's the complete Exodus. So that's what the commentators explain as it relates to this week's portion. And we're going to turn to the Shira, and I'm going to share with you a question, which will be our main discussion itself. Now, the song appears on page 374 after the nation enters into the dry land, which was once sea. The sea covers the Egyptians, and then in verse 31, the nation of Israel, they have Yirat Hashem, the fear of God, the reverence of God, and they believe in God, and they believe in the role that Moshe is going to play. So we are ready for the complete Exodus, and then they go ahead and they sing the song. Now, if I would ask you what is the song about, you would say the song is about the fact that they survived, and the that the Egyptians, who made this terrifying declaration, the Egyptian leadership declared that you could go ahead, chase the people of Israel, and whatever you take from them is yours. Often when you read throughout Tanakh about battles, you read about the concern that relates to the goods, the booty,
Booty.
What other word am I looking for?
Plunder?
The spoils of war. And, for example, when it comes to Purim, right? That there was an awful decree because they were going to go ahead and kill the people of Israel. Ushlalam lavos. It's going to be what? It's going to be taken by everyone. So why is that such a big deal? In other words, today's the 70th day that the world is commemorating, right? So Europe is really, really concerned today about the welfare of the Jews, right? So do you hear, we're going to be talking about human life, the 1 who knows how many, million that were massacred by the Nazis specifically there. I hope they don't focus too much, right? I hope NPR doesn't have a whole talk about the lost art that occurred today, 70th day of Auschwitz. We should remembering the art that was lost. I hope they don't do that. They might, but so why is there ever in Tanakh, why is it at times presented like you should know that the property is going to be lost as well? Pharaoh, in the text, right? Erdov, Asig, Achalek, Shalal. He tells his nation, we shall go. We're going to chase them. We're going to get them. And when it comes to the spoils of war, it's all yours. Why is it significant? So, the reason it is significant is because when you want to go ahead and encourage your nation to act like animals and to go ahead and be part of this attack, what you do is you tell them it's all yours. You can loot, right?
It's an incentive.
A very big incentive, and that becomes terrifying because when people believe that they have something to gain, they're going to put all their effort and energy, and that's what's terrifying about Ushlalam Lavos. When you read about the Haggadah, when you read in the Megillah that the Jews are going to be free for all. So when their neighbors know that they could just go ahead and take their property, as occurred in Europe. You know how many stories we've all heard of people who come back and see their homes, and there's someone living there, and when the family, when the community, when individuals return, my grandmother, my mother's mother, had a younger brother. My grandmother, she survived the war because she made her way to Shanghai. Her mother, her sisters, her sister-in-laws, so they were all massacred by the Nazis early in the war, it seems. One brother survived the war. The brother survives the war, and right after the war, he makes his way back to the shtetl because he was able to conceal some goods. And as he gets back to town, the locals realize that if he's here, what's he going to do? Take some of the property back, so they killed him right after the war.
My father said there were more people killed after the war when they went back to their hometowns than he saw during the
war itself. That's the reality. So people, you give the right, you let the Poles take what belongs to the Jews. That's the concern. So now we can understand the statement of Pharaoh. Erdov asik chalek shalom. So this is a terrifying moment for the people of Israel. They hear the call of war. They know that we have here an army with a great incentive that is coming with all their energy to wipe out the Jews, and they're saved. I think that should be the first statement. Az yashir Moshe bnei Yisrael et hashira azot, ashira laHashem sheitzilani mi paro ume'amo, hu amru amaro yev erdov asik chalek shalom. That would be the main focus. Thank God for saving us. Yes.
What shalom was there that they were taking along with them? They were slaves. Right?
So remember, they requested.
This is stuff that they took from the Egyptians. They were going to get it back.
They requested, and they want their items back. So they had good items there, and that's what they wanted. That's what was used as a tool to encourage the nation. So what is the first statement that is addressed in the Shira? What is the first statement? So let's read it. As Yashir Moshe bnei Yisrael Tashira Azot LaHashem. Then Moshe and the children of Israel chose to sing the song to God, Vayameru le'emor, and here we go, chorus, Ashira laHashem. I shall go ahead and sing to God. I'm okay with that. Ki go ga'ah, because He is exalted over the arrogant. That's the opening statement, and it seems like an important one because when Miriam is singing, if you look at the end of the song, and Miriam gathers the women to sing as well, that seems to be the line. Shira la Hashem. What Shira la Hashem? I see something interesting there that I'm missing, but you don't hear.
Well, there many years ago, there was a drush given in the shul that referenced the next pasuk about this is why you shouldn't have women singing.
Okay. In this shul?
They went separate?
No, not here.
Yes.
Somewhere else. Anyway, so the women did sing in the crossing of the sea. You know that
Nobody listened.
there was to do in France after the war. You know, many people, faith was on a shaky foundation after the war, to put it lightly. And I've heard many, many stories of people who came from very traditional backgrounds and who are very traditional today. But the years after the war, I mean, you know, which is the logical thing to do in some ways, is like you just can't continue that lifestyle of faith after seeing such darkness. So there were some incredible youth movements taking place, which really in many ways saved Judaism, like Bnei Akiva, like Ezra, like there were many different youth movements throughout Europe to deal with this issue, to go ahead and, you know, somehow show a positive end of Judaism. So in France, they had get-togethers. I think the group was called the Ezra group, and they had Friday Shabbat afternoon get-togethers, and they would sing there. They'd sing songs, very nice. The boys and the girls, they were singing. So one of the zealots was disturbed that they're singing songs together. Now, that's like the big issue that he... So he writes a letter to Switzerland. There's a big posuk there in Switzerland by the name of Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg. And he asked him a question, how do you deal with this problem that they're singing there? And he gave a response which is fundamental, very important one. And he says the following. Number one, yes, there is a concept that men do not listen to women singing. It is true. It is mentioned in the Talmud. However, number one, that statement applied to mundane songs, right? To hear
Pop songs.
Pop songs, Britney Spears, Madonna. There would be a problem to hear a live performance of Spears / Madonna for many, many reasons without getting into it. Sing Madonna. Anyway, so I met her once at a Kabbalistic class, but that... Number one, Shirei Kodesh, there is no problem. Meaning songs that are talking about Shirul Hashem Ki Gaga, there is no problem. You know, it's a number two, when you're dealing here with the group, the whole issue is that you can hear a voice, it's going to arouse the male, and he's going to, you know, might develop some problematic behaviors. It does not apply if it's a group. In a group, it does not apply. So he presents those two answers to the Ezra get-togethers, and he encourages them to continue because it served such a tremendous purpose for what the nation needed at that time. So just, you mentioned it, I mentioned it. That's what we had. My question...
Would that still apply today?
In Ezra?
What do you mean?
In other words, if there was a women's choir and they're singing...
Together with a male.
Let me ask you a question. Let's say I'm invited to a Shabbat meal by someone, right? And women start singing, and it's Shirei Kodesh at a Shabbos meal,
right.
and it's a group. I don't mean a whole choir; it's a group.
Yeah.
But is there a problem? Answer is absolutely no problem. So it applies. The law, the Torah didn't change.
Right, but how about going, let's say, to a concert?
A concert of
women singers, or women and men singers.
Women and men
Shirei
singers.
Kodesh.
What was that?
Singing Shirei Kodesh.
That's not what he's done.
If his response would tell you that the halachic problem of the voice of a woman would not apply if it is Shirei Kodesh and a choir. That's exactly what he said.
Okay.
That's
How
what he
about a
said.
women's choir by itself?
So he would tell you that if it is what kind of songs?
Shirei
Because the
Kodesh.
Beis Yaakov in Baltimore put out a recording of their choir, and it says on it, warning, men should not listen to this.
This tape will explode. If chromosomes, if we sense any testosterone near this tape, it will explode. Mission impossible. Yes. Anyway, with that, that,
There's a whole kerfuffle with Bennett. Bennett in Israel put out a song for his
Right,
party,
campaign.
and he had the girl who almost won the Voice, and the boy who almost, and they're both from.
Aha.
And he sang separately, and she sang separately,
And
and
they
they
mixed
put they mixed it for
In the studio.
in the
Interesting.
studio.
With the mechitza and the-
So there
very
was-
interesting.
No,
No,
I mixed
separate,
in the
yeah.
studio.
Very
But,
interesting.
He actually asked the Shiloh from his Rav, who said he could do it.
Boy,
And a number of Rabbanim in the Datila Umi community came out very strongly against it.
interesting.
You know, one of them actually said that his halachic view of the situation is that if you
don't know,
don't know who
lady.
the singer is,
Yeah,
then you could be
Like on
permitted
the
to listen
radio.
to a recording.
that's
But
100. Maram
if,
Shik says
but
it's
if
very
you
old
could,
Shuva, yes.
but if you are imagining in your mind
Right.
who she is and what she
Correct.
looks
She
like,
is very
then that creates the issue of.
Anyway, okay. Something tells me we had enough of this, right? But thank you for the information. With that, my question is, why is this song introduced with the fact that God is exalted above the arrogant? That's the question I want to deal with. It is not an opening statement of all things, right? Sing about salvation. Sing about the end of enslavement. Sing about the fact that God, you're almost dead and you are alive. That should be the opening statement. Okay? Now, we are trying to figure out two things here. The message of Pesach, meaning if Pesach is extended into day 7, so obviously there's a Passover-ish message here. And number 2, we're trying to figure out why it's introduced with this statement. That's the questions I'm asking, so I'm going to share with you an answer. And this is an answer by a rabbi who lived in the 16th century, not very well known. His name was Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi. We're not sure exactly where he was born, but he did study some time in Israel. He spent some time in Egypt, had to leave Egypt, lands up in Cyprus, makes his way eventually to Europe, to Prague, travels the Jewish world, and is a respected authority. And he writes a commentary on Chumash called Ma'aseh Hashem. Ma'aseh Hashem. This authority, this rabbinic authority, spoke at least 10 languages. Well, you travel the world, you communicate with people. My grandfather used to say that Yiddish is the most important language. Why? Because wherever you land up, you'll find someone speaking Yiddish. That's like a Jewish approach.
Right.
So he didn't speak only Yiddish, he spoke Yiddish in all the languages that he needed to pull him through from the Middle East to Bohemia. Fine? And in his introduction to Ma'aseh Hashem, he notes that you should know that this book that we call Torah is to guide not just us, but rather the Almighty wants humanity to go ahead and overcome their nature. Because naturally people could do very harmful things. This is a book that's here to guide humanity, but of course the people of Israel. So he starts off with, you sense here that you're dealing with a thinker, a 16th century thinker, who is a little bit different, that does not approach our religion as a religion that is just for the Jews, but rather there is a significance. The human race is significant. So this is an insight that you'll already pick up very soon, the direction he is going in. Now, number 2. We as people of faith have always struggled and processed the question of the other who is not part of the faith, right? The other who is not practicing the faith. What attitude do we have towards them? The evildoer, right? The people who are actually doing things that are bad. How do we deal with them? This is a concept that faith in general is a very dangerous thing. We as believers in something supernatural always have to be mindful of the fact that it is not so far to turn into people who fly planes into buildings. It's not this major leap of faith, because as soon as you are in the realm of faith, you are already a dangerous person. There's something very dangerous about faith, because when you are functioning without faith, you are rational. Now, the rational being can be a very destructive being as well. You could rationalize all kind of destructive things. But faith is not the answer on its own, because the Talmud notes that Torah itself and all faith could be sam hachaim. It could be like a Shoppers Drug Mart, that if there's an ailment you have, you go there and you take the right dosage. It is a blessing. We are very, very thankful. We turn to the Almighty and thanking Him for allowing humans to discover from Motrin to Tylenol, Percocet, whatever is necessary. But we know very well that the same Percocet, which is necessary after you have a root canal, if you take 15 of them, right, that you picked up at a corner street, there could be a little bit of a problem there. We all agree. And that's what spirituality is about. This is what the Talmud tells us. The Torah could be Sam ha-chaim, but it could be Sam ha-mavet, it could be death. So this is a warning. Our tradition has been always given with a warning. And the warning has to do with the question, how do we deal with the evildoer? What approach, what attitude do we have towards the outsider? That really defines what the religion is about. Okay? And what do I mean by that? I'll share with you a story. The story goes that once upon a time, our Shmona Esrei, our 18 blessings, actually had 18. Right? Once upon a time, the 18 was really an 18. But something happened. We know very well that at some point in the beginning of the 2nd century, we're going through a crisis. And there are people, educators, who looked like good Jews and acted like good Jews and sounded like good Jews. But the problem is that they happen to believe that a specific character from Nazareth is the latest guy. And we had preachers and educators that believed that. So there was a need to go ahead and set a path to establish some kind of system to deal with the new problem. So we are told that in a place called Yavna there's a Rabban Gamliel, and Rabban Gamliel turns to his wise disciples and he says, we need to establish a blessing. A blessing that is a declaration that we are uprooting, that we are rejecting these philosophies that are in essence damaging what we are about. But he says we need to find a very special person to do it. We need an author for such a blessing. It can't be in some average individual. We need someone very, very special. And they nominate a fellow by the name of Shimon ha-Pakuli. He's the one that is chosen. Something special about him. And he establishes this blessing. And the rabbis declared that from this point on, if you lead, and remember in those days, it wasn't like today that everyone said the silent Amidah, there was one person doing it for everyone else. If you are the one who is leading, and you skip that blessing, you're out of here. Meaning, that would be an indication, that would be telling everyone that you are not on board with our rejection, with the rejecting of the new movements. Fine. So, that first year seemed to be a very interesting one. I can imagine the scene in the shul, right? It could be Lebedik. Kids could come home and share with their, moms and dads the entertainment that occurred in shul, that they had to throw a guy out. Why? Because he skipped the blessing of the apikorsim, of the heretics. Now, what happened is that about a year later, Shimon HaPakuli was honored. Maybe at your side, he was the one that led the congregation. And he gets to that blessing, and he was silent. Something doesn't go. Something, right? And he waits, and there was a tremendous amount of tension there in the study hall. What do we do with this guy? Right? He's not doing it. Eventually, he composed himself, and he was able to say it. The rabbis asked Rabban Gamliel, why did you, throw him out? Meaning, maybe he changed his, maybe got inspired at some point. Maybe he was driving and he saw a bumper sticker that says John 3:16, and something happened to him and he changed. Well, Rabbi Gamliel felt that confident that Shimon, he's one of ours. He's fine. Now the question is, what took him, that he didn't forget the blessing? Obviously, he wasn't ready to say it. What occurred there? All right. So comes Rav Kook. And Rav Kook tells us that you should know that when it comes to writing of a blessing, anyone could do it. In those days, there were many great scholars. They were familiar with the language. They would find the right words. But what was necessary at that point was to find someone, Memi shekulo tahor v'kodesh la'Hashem. You want this specific blessing has to be written by a person that has zero hatred in his heart. It is natural for a person, he tells us, that you hate someone. Right? You just can't stand someone. It's very natural. To go ahead and write a blessing when you have a natural tendency to hate, that's destructive. To write a blessing that the message is that you have to go ahead and point your finger towards a specific individual or a group and say that they are unacceptable, it can only come from love. It can only come from love. It has to be someone that could declare that even if there's someone that caused you tsaras for decades, if they stumble, you are not going to be happy. And it's fascinating that if you open Pirkei Avot and you look at the statement that was made by this Shimon HaPakuli, so we are told that Shimon HaPakuli was Shimon, he was the one that said, Binfol oivecha al tismach. Right? That's what we are told. Someone that has the ability never to celebrate the fact that others have their downfall. He's the person. And therefore, a year later, when he was standing there, and he had to say the blessing, he was only willing to say the blessing when he felt complete love of all people. So therefore, the reason he remained meditating and wasn't able to complete the blessing is because he was a person who would never make such a statement if he did not feel the love. In other words, the danger is that when you go ahead and make a declaration, he is evil, right? It could come from hatred. That could lead you to the path of destruction. It is necessary at times to reject, but you're not rejecting a person, you are rejecting a philosophy. That's what Judaism is about. We don't say, Yitamu, right, that we want God to get rid of sinners, we want God to get rid of the sin, right? You are not rejecting the person, you are rejecting the action. That's what Judaism is about. So this is a very fundamental part of our religion, bin polo vechal tismach, right? And the Torah and the Talmud shares with us the following, that at the time of the crossing of the sea, the angels wanted to sing to God, and what did God declare? Masei yadai tovim bayam, that when my handwork, when humans are suffering, when they are being drowned in the sea, it is not the appropriate time for song. That's what we are told. You are familiar as well with the fact that there's something very unique about Pesach. That when it comes to Shavuot, and when it comes to Sukkot, or even Hanukkah, we have the complete Hallel. When it comes to the second half of Pesach, we don't have a complete Hallel, right? We skip 2 paragraphs. Why do we do that? So the Talmud gives one explanation, and that has to do with the sacrifices, that they are basically the same sacrifice that is brought every single day, so there's no elevated sense of happiness. But the Midrash tells us that you should know, we minimize our song because, yes, we have to be thankful to the Almighty that we were saved, but the loss of human life is something we remember. It is the loss of human life that we are mindful, and therefore we cut out those 2 paragraphs. The last days, and you're not going to do more on Chol HaMoed than the last days, and therefore the second half of Pesach, Hallel is not complete. So that is what we are being told, and now I will share with you the insight of this Rabbi Eliezer Ashkenazi. And he tells us the following, that the reason we start off the Shira with the statement that God is the one who is elevated over the haughty ones is because it is, in his words, a little bit as if of an apology. In other words, we feel a level of discomfort that we are singing to God when people die. But the problem is that Pharaoh was a person who was acting godlike. He was the most haughty of all. There was a tremendous danger that the people of Israel for eternity will take that culture with them. And therefore, it starts off, the song does not start off with being thankful for death. This song starts off with the danger that existed with the culture and the philosophy of the Egyptians that the Jews were carrying. And therefore they go ahead and we start the song with that declaration. And it's as if we say to God, listen, deep down we don't want to sing for the loss of life. This is not something we want to do. But due to the fact that there was such a destructive force that existed, known as the Pharaoh, therefore we go ahead and we have no choice but to sing. And therefore it's structured in such a way. That's what he shares with us. And this becomes, everything okay? That's okay. Not bad. Have a good day. Thank you again. That's what we are. That's what is being addressed here by this thinker. Now, there is a relationship between someone who thinks in such a way and someone who speaks many, many languages. Meaning, I don't think it's random that it happened to be that he came up with a vort on the parsha with an insight, and at the same time, he happened to be a man of culture. There's two ways to approach Judaism. There are those who approach it only from within. Only from within. In other words, they are given a system of thought, they are given a philosophy, and they live with it their whole life, and do not bother one iota to look outside of it. There are those who live their life by it. It's a very, very, very pure form of Judaism, and you don't struggle as much with such an approach. You never ask yourself the questions like, what does the Almighty expect? If Torah is the essence and the purpose of creation, what does Almighty expect from the man in China who never interacted with a Jew? In other words, how exactly is he supposed to reach a high level of spirituality? They never ever were disturbed with such a question because they were handed a specific book and they were handed a specific way of thought, and that became their essence. You know, in some circles, there's an argument that Jews, right, or halachic authorities, are ones who always ask questions. And that's true. When you study Talmud, you're always asking. When you're studying Jewish law or Jewish thought, you're always asking questions. So obviously these are people who are intellectually honest because they are always questioning things. But the truth is, it is possible. In other words, if I hand you a system, and I tell you could ask questions, these types of questions, and you live your life asking questions from within a system, you're not asking questions about the system, you're asking questions within the system. So that is something that is very common in some schools, right? You never ever struggle with the world on the outside. Now, on the other hand, a person who interacts with the world, and if it is natural for you as a human being, if you're a decent person, that if you interact with someone, there's a level of concern for their welfare. The level of concern for their welfare is not just physical, but physical, metaphysical, spiritual, all of that comes into play as well. And then you start asking questions, right? You start asking questions of, I get redemption, right? And I get my olam haba through this tradition. What about them, right? These are questions that you deal with. You ask yourself questions of, if I believe that my faith is 100% the truth, and the Muslim who is sitting next to me on the plane does, and the Christian does as well, right? We can't be all right? So how do I deal with these questions? I'm 100% sure because I heard it from my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. Guess what? They heard it as well. I'm 100% sure because I could tell you stories of my tzaddik that he was able to perform miracles. But guess what? Guess what? The Pope, the Christian, they have many legends of people that were canonized because they performed how many miracles do you need to become canonized? Two miracles. Shal Pishnai made him. So they have their miracles too. I don't know imams what miracles they do, but the point is that you ask yourself these questions. You find solutions, right? But the result is that you look at things in a broader way. So this is a person who studies, interacts, is interested in languages, has traveled the world, is going to be one who's going to, number one, ask the questions at all. Meaning, I start and I read about the Egyptians dying, right? The sinners dying, right? Is this an ideal situation? And the result is often going to be that you're going to find commentators, and I'm talking about people that are very devoted to our tradition. You're going to read and find commentators who relate to your way of thinking. And you will note often that it's interesting that you will find people that, for example, who were in Italy during the Renaissance, rabbinic authorities. Rabbinic authorities obviously interacted with the culture and the way of thinking, the zeitgeist, and as a result, their way of thinking is going to address it, and they're going to even read Chumash. They're going to find insight. Their way of thinking is going to be shown in their commentary to Chumash. Like, for example, Reb Ovadia from Sforno. Right? Reb Ovadia from Sforno tells us that when we are told that the people of Israel are a mamlechet kohanim, right? Vegoy kadosh. What does that mean that we are a nation of priests? Well, the priest, what is the purpose of the priest? The priest is to teach, to educate, to reach out. We have that goal. In other words, we are here to educate humanity. It's a statement, it's a declaration that you walk into Judaism with a value of the human race, a value of other ways of thinking. Right? That's what your Judaism is about, that there's a bigger world. In no way does that take away the significance of the Jew. Now, another question is, you wake up in the morning, and there's a mitzvah to make a bracha on the study of Torah. There's a mitzvah to make a bracha on the study of Torah. And your declaration is, Asher bachar banu, we are chosen. We are chosen. Two ways to approach it. One approach is, you know what? I am chosen. Mikol amim, from all of the nations. I am better than everyone else. In some ways, you could understand the statement to mean that. You live your life. In other words, if I walk into the game that's called Planet Earth with the understanding I am better than others, fine. I have my practice, my rule. They're foolish for not having it. I'm within my vision. Now, if on the other hand I take an approach that all of humanity is valuable, so the Asher Bachar Banu becomes a responsibility. Meaning now that I really see myself as part of the human race. If I am part of the human race, right, I'm not really better, but I have a unique mission. My unique mission is to be that educator. If my mission is to become that educator to humanity, so you know what? I suddenly have a responsibility. Just as when I walk into a classroom, right? The kids in this day and age are wearing pajamas, right? Pajamas became the norm. I would like to see do research of when Ruth's pajamas became the given for high school. Right, there was that movie, Mr. Holland's Opus. Remember Mr. Holland's Opus? That in the 1960s, the schools, the girls looked like they were dressed for a Bis Yaakov, right? And by the 1980s, it looked like they were part of a punk rock group. Like the shift that occurred in society. So a teacher walks into a classroom. The teacher is dressed differently. Why? Because the teacher understands that I have a little bit of a different responsibility here. Yes, I'm in the classroom with everyone else, but because they're tired and they have their feet on the table in front of them, and they're half farshlaf, it doesn't mean that I have to go ahead and do the same, because I am the teacher. Asher bachar banu, I walk in, I don't think I'm better than them. Many of them are very, very bright and perhaps they're going to succeed in life in areas that I could never dream of. But the reality is that at this moment I have a responsibility. You take a very different approach of Asher Bachar Banu. All this comes up with the statement of Maaseh Yadai Tovim Bayam, that the Talmud notes that when we sing the song, it is not a complete celebration. And therefore, when we ask, right, why is this song and why is this day, the seventh day of Pesach, part of the Exodus process? Our journey as a nation cannot begin, right? And we can never fulfill our mission if we do not have the right attitude towards humanity. In other words, when we talk about the Messianic era, when we talk about shuls, rabbis at times are asked the question of people who want to come to a shul that are not Jewish. I've gotten those calls, and the answer, of course, is that the shul is like the temple in Jerusalem. It's a mikdash me'at. The temple in Jerusalem, do you think that was there only for the Jews? Absolutely not. King Solomon himself, in his first prayer at the structure, he makes it clear that this will be a house for all nations. And in some ways, he actually requested from the Almighty that all nations, when they come for prayer, even if they're not worthy, may you tune into their prayers, because I don't want that they should believe that you are not one who listens to prayer. Meaning, the temple, the Bet HaMikdash, was established as a Bet Tfilah L'Chol Amim. So obviously, if we have a shul in this day and age, we welcome people. We welcome people that walk in with the willingness to listen. We've had stories in shuls, in many, many places, of people that walk in with an agenda, right? That they came in. I remember once in Milwaukee, Rabbi Tversky, a very kind man, but I remember once in a shul, he's got up at the drasha and he said, in the back row we have Mr. So-and-so, he's welcome, but just everyone should be aware that conversations with him should be avoided, because it was a person that came in with an agenda to share his faith and to do his part, that he should acquire his portion in the world to come, because he is a believer, that if you do not buy into his faith, you're doomed for eternity. This is what the Shira is about. And hopefully the message is one that we've learned. I apologize for going different places, but nevertheless, well, many of you played a significant role in leading me in those different places today. But Eliezer Ashkenazi is a fascinating commentator. I did not go through all his works, but he's interesting, a thinker from that era that goes beyond that which is traditional, always does interest me. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. When did you get back?
Last night.